Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bases Loaded. I'm Blake Munroe, where I'm joined each and every week by CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe. And guys, we have actual baseball to talk about now. We've seen 4 games. We saw the opening series versus UC Davis. We saw on Tuesday night against Lamar. The Longhorns are 4-0. Your initial thoughts, please.
You took care of business, right? Those are 4 games you should have won. You did so by a pretty significant fashion in each of them, right? 2 run rules. You took care of business. I thought there were plenty of positives to take away from the lineup, the top 4, top 5 that we've talked about for quite some time. Obviously, Anthony Pack had himself quite a debut weekend as well. And then that starting rotation, the first 3 starters that we saw over the weekend, I thought they lived up to expectations, especially Volantis on Sundays. But beyond that, look, there's still some questions for me about this team. I know we'll get into that here in a minute, but when it comes to what this team did with the first 4 games, I don't think there's much more that you can look at and say, I wish I saw more of than what we got out of to start the season.
Love the starting pitching. Riojas and Harrison and Volantis. Volantis was awesome on Sunday. Okay-ish out of the bullpen. I think it's going to take some time to kind of figure out, what guys' roles are going to be. And, some guys may get overextended a little bit early in the season compared to, hey, maybe he's a 2-inning guy, but you pushed him to 3 and maybe he wasn't as sharp, things like that. The thing for me that stood out was, Schloss, I think it was after the Friday game, maybe, is he said he hasn't had 3 hitters that are as good hitting to all fields as he's got in the same lineup with Doza, Tenney, and Robbins. And, Tenney, it seemed like he couldn't catch a break, walked a ton. I think 6 walks in the UC Davis series, and then he hits 2 tanks in the midweek game. And speaking of the midweek game, Blake, that's the other thing that stood out. Those Tuesday games, man, it's so much about getting guys work and maybe tinkering with the lineup, and you don't know what the opponent's doing. They can get sideways. They can take forever. But, for Texas to trail, and we can get into the Jason Flores piece of that, for Texas to trail for a good chunk of that game and then to run rule it at the end of the day, I kind of like that. A game that looked like it wasn't shaping up very well to end in a run rule win. I think it just tells you how freaking talented this team is.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt on that one. Well, let's go back to the weekend a little more in depth, guys. Anything that really surprised you about this team?
Surprise? I don't know. It was UC Davis to begin the season. You expect to win 3-0. What was it? 5 earned runs, 7 runs total scored. So, you did your job from the starting rotation. I thought the bullpen looked, serviceable enough. They certainly were moments, Jeff, that I thought, hey, maybe there were some extension for guys that are relatively new to the big scene. But altogether, look, you take care of business once again. Here's where I guess some of my questions about this team start to come in. And, again, it's only 4 games. And I know that it's pretty nitpicky when it comes down to critiques or questions this early. But will there be enough power throughout the lineup after the first 5, right? And what we've seen so far is 5 total home runs. I believe Carson Tenney, obviously 2 against Lamar. We saw Ethan Mendoza with a pair, Aiden Robbins as well. That's all coming from the top half of your lineup. Casey Borba probably has 2 round trippers if the pole down left field line is 10 feet or even 5 feet further left. But my point is, when you start looking towards the back end, is there enough pop, right? Is there enough pop to even, protect that of a Carson Tenney who's hitting in your 4 spot? He walked 9 times. If that's kind of the plan and Texas isn't taking advantage of that consistently, well, now you're in a tough spot where teams can basically just give Carson Tenney a free pass and say, hey, we'll work with whoever's behind him. So right now, that's kind of my unknown. Of course, never will complain about having, I think, 36 walks through 4 games. That is spectacular, especially in comparison to the only 26 strikeouts. But point is there enough front to bottom pop in the lineup that we will see? Maybe that changes with Jonah, but altogether, again, hard to complain being 4-0 with 2 run rules in that.
Blake, I know even when you guys have had Schloss on Coffee and Football, like the free base battle, the battle of free bases is something that's really big for him. Walks, hit by pitches, the whole deal. They're really good in that area. And again, like CJ said, you got to have the caveat that yes, it's UC Davis. Yes, you're only 4 games into this. But I just like the fact that specifically Timo Becerra and Anthony Pack, both those guys, like looking at them, Becerra at third and Anthony Pack in right field, like, okay, you can see why they won those jobs and why they're in the positions they're in. We'll see if how it plays out over the long haul. Like Anthony Pack is a freshman, like, at some point he's going to struggle. Like at some point he's going to hit the wall. It happens to every freshman. It doesn't matter how good they are. I've seen even some of the best freshmen I've seen come through this program have hit the wall at some point. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I think Becerra could be one of those guys that I don't know that he's going to wow you with anything, but if he can just be solid defensively, solid at the plate, just be a guy that doesn't do anything that really gets you beat, you win a lot of games with those kind of guys.
Yeah. So looking at the weekend series, if we had to give a gold star, an MVP, whatever it may be, who would be y'all's choice? And I'll tell you mine after y'all are done. That way we don't have any of the same ones.
I still like me some Ethan Mendoza. If I had to go through a guy in the lineup, look, we saw the pop, obviously, when it comes to his frame and the power that he added back over the offseason. That stood out to me almost immediately. That's probably my guy that I've looked at saying, okay, I know that he's going to be a consistent piece in this lineup regardless of who Texas faces.
I'm going to go Ruger Riojas over Dylan Valanis just because the start was really bad on Friday. Like, didn't get off to a good start at all. But, man, once he settled in, he was unhittable and was lights out the rest of the way after that rough start. So, and, didn't end the year well. Like, we talked a lot about that because he was sick and I think just kind of ran out of gas at the end. And I think to have that kind of start, you wonder, okay, what's that going to do to somebody's psyche? But for him to snap out of it, battle back, and if you just read the box score, you'd be none the wiser about his first Friday start of the season. Just thought he did a really good job bouncing back after the rough start.
So you actually stole mine. So I figured one of you were going to go Valanis and then the other Pack, and y'all both completely surprised me. But I am going to go Pack just for his hitting alone. He batted 1,000 on Friday night, 3 at bats. He was, I think, like 6.67 Saturday, and then 5.45 on Sunday. And so Lamar was actually his lowest batting average of the 4 games. But if you just look at that weekend, that's a hell of a weekend at the plate. So I will go with him since you stole mine, Jeff, because I thought neither one of them were going to take Riojas.
My bad. I always like to try to go against the grain a little bit.
Well, let's look at that Tuesday game. I mean, started a little slow, a little ugly on the mound. Let's go a little more in depth on that.
Yeah, it wasn't Jason Flores' best stuff. He looked great through the first inning. He's thrown 95, 96 in that range. I thought the velocity looked good. The problem is I'm not sure that there was a lot of movement, left a lot of pitches up and in. And, Lamar, D1 baseball players as well. And they took advantage with a couple of extra base hits, both down the line, back to back to kind of get that scoring started. What was really encouraging, and Blake, I know that you mentioned this on the offset, but look, Texas struggled at the plate for the first 3 or 4 innings, right? The top of the lineup didn't get a lot going, but then you saw guys towards the bottom. And this is what I'm talking about, the generating of rallies from that bottom end. Obviously, Anthony Pack had a great game, or has had a great first 4 starts for Texas. But Carson Tenney getting the long ball going, timely hitting as well, getting guys on base, and the walks certainly adding up for the free bases. That's something that I thought, and the big thing for me was Ethan Walker coming in and Sam Kozart coming in and shutting the door to not let that lead extend to something that was insurmountable.
How about Gumbo Duplantier coming in, going 2 for 2 off the bench? I'll just throw that out there, give a shout out to Gumbo. I think that was a Lamar team. I think we can keep in mind too, during that fall exhibition. I mean, that's a Lamar team that beat Texas for whatever winning a fall exhibition is worth. That and $5 will get you a decent cup of coffee. But you could tell that wasn't a Lamar team that was intimidated to be at Dish Falk on a Tuesday night. Like, they kind of attacked from the jump. It's way too early to panic about the trajectory of Jason Flores this season after one start. But, the thing he might run up against is if you have another one of these and you continue to see signs, like we saw a lot of positive from Sam Cozart again on Tuesday. If you start to see Cozart start to ascend and you have another couple of these rough outings, man, you may lose your spot as the midweek guy. But I think Flores is huge, guys, because I want them to I want him to pitch himself into the weekend rotation where he forces himself in there. That way you can use Riojas however you want to use him. Maybe you keep him in a weekend rotation the rest of the way and it just works out. But I would rather not stretch him so much and make sure he's got plenty of gas left in the tank once you get to the postseason. And Flores is a really, really big part of that.
You know, we talked about surprises in the first weekend. Something I was surprised about last night, Maddox Monsour that kid can fly. You know, he's out of Georgia. He hit the the triple, 3 RBI triple that ended the game. But that kid can fly. I mean, he is quick.
Yeah, that was a great piece of hitting too, going down the right field line with that. It was actually fun watching that. You see the entire bullpen basically storming out of the gate, ready to, you know, enjoy the walk-off triple, if you will. I thought that was fun. Last thing I'll add to this, Texas had 7 walks in every game so far. They've had 9 in 3 straight as well. That's the approach at the plate, finding your pitch but not chasing, not being too aggressive. That will go a long way.
So we talked about this on Coffee and Football on Wednesday morning, but I got to bring it up. Another surprise. Did y'all see Cozart's shoes, his cleats?
Yeah.
Have y'all seen that? Yeah. So for those that don't know, he wears a size, was it a 16 or 18?
18.
18. Okay, that's what it is. And Nike does not make baseball cleats that big. So they have to go get Kobe's. This is a basketball shoe you're seeing on the screen. They drill holes in them and then put the studs in them. But that is crazy. I saw a lot of Texas fans reaching out to Shaq, asking him to come up with the solution for Cozart. So we'll have to see what happens. But I just had to bring that up because, number one, he already looks like a grown man. Number two, that's some big shoes, guys.
Oof. Shoot, if he keeps throwing like this, Shaq better come through with some shoe deal here.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like I said, Nike's probably not thinking they've got to make a baseball shoe for a size 18 foot. But then you run into, hey, you know, Nike pays a lot of money to have the swoosh on all things burnt orange, and Shaq's not a Nike guy. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that's just adds to the uniqueness of Sam Cozart, who Blake, I know Schloss has been high on him from day one. Anytime whether he's been on the channel or done a press conference, that kid's got a chance to be really special by the time he's done.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Well, let's look at the polls because there was a little movement, not a ton, but a little bit. And Texas ranked number 2 in the Collegiate Baseball Writers Association poll. They're 3 in D1 baseball, 3 in USA Today, 7 now in Baseball America, and 8 in Perfect Games. So moved up 1 spot in Baseball America and moved up 1 spot in the NCBWA after seeing what y'all saw. And granted, it was UC Davis and Lamar, but what are we feeling on these?
I always give these kind of a tough time to buy into fully until I see many of the teams in the country, Texas included this year, play others of similar caliber, right? You know, get through some of these preseason tournaments and then give me a ranking basically. So it's fun fodder. It's fun to discussion. It's fun to see a single digit number here, but you know, how much does that really matter in baseball when you play upwards of 60 games? You know, that's tough for me to truly hone in on and believe immediately.
At this point with the team, the raw talent justifies the ranking. We'll see how it plays out, but yeah, we saw a little bit in the fall and kind of what we were hearing throughout the winter, at least in the preseason, how good this team could be. But man, like I said, they looked the part.
Yeah. Well, this weekend we'll hopefully learn a little bit more. Got Michigan State on deck, so Texas will actually play 8 games before they hit the road. And so you got Michigan State on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then UTRGV on Tuesday. What are we hoping to learn, guys?
See if everything's repeatable, right? Baseball is a funky game. You know, your best days not going to come every single day at the dish. Who else steps up? Who else, you know, kind of extends their way into the starting lineup that we've seen so far, little glimpses of. But altogether, keep the same approach at the plate, right? The Dish is a tough place to hit home runs at. It's a fun place to hit home runs at, that's for sure. But does the same approach at the plate sustain with the walks, with the low strikeout numbers? That's something that can carry on from a hot start in the season for just about anybody in the lineup.
I want to see this team compete, and I don't feel like that's going to be a problem. But I'm not saying Michigan State that's a group of world beaters coming to Dish Falk, and Louisville's not quite 100% right now. They did go on the road and take 2 out of 3 from Louisville, and they did have a midweek game. And man, sometimes with the Big Ten teams, because they don't get a ton of time, because of the snow and everything, they don't get as much time as the teams in the South do during the winter to work out. So you kind of really don't know what you're going to get, but it seems like this is at least maybe a solid Michigan State ball club that may be capable of taking a game if you don't show up one of these days.
Well, before we get out of here, I need to give one other shout out. It's on Texas baseball's bases loaded, but the bases can be loaded in softball as well. I guess it would help if I brought up the right thing. And softball, 9-1 at this point. They started the season tied with Tech for number 1. They've now slipped to number 3 after a loss to number 9 Nebraska, 8-5. Of course, they beat Nebraska the day before, 15-10. So now Tennessee is 1. Tech is 2 because Tech dropped the game. And then Texas softball is ranked number 3, but 9-1, not a bad start for Mike White.
No, look, can never complain winning 9 out of 10. And Texas, Tech taking that top spot. Texas has their number in softball. It doesn't matter this early in the year. They'll get it back.
As much as I would say don't freak out about baseball or softball, it seems like you play like 120 games a year, so I'm definitely not gonna freak out about a loss this early in the season. So.
Yeah, and they got some decent opponents coming up too. Arizona and Stanford should learn a lot about them this weekend. And then I think like Boise State and one other team that I cannot remember off the top of my head is in that tournament as well. So they got it rolling. There's some shutouts on that already and some high scoring games included.
Hey, and shout out Reese Atwood. Texas is the all-time home run leader now. So 59 round trips around the bases. That's pretty darn impressive.
Without a doubt. Before we get out of here, I do have a couple of pieces of news, nothing groundbreaking or shattering, whatever it may be. But a lot of people on Coffee and Football have asked, and maybe in the live stream too, what's the deal with Jonah? When will we see Jonah? Where was he at this past weekend? And I said this on Wednesday morning, but don't be surprised if he plays this weekend. It sounds like that was more of a precautionary deal, stemming back from the bowl game, bowl practices, whatever it may be. But Texas likes where he's at injury-wise. And then as far as the weekend rotation, guys, doesn't sound like anything's changing there. So more Riojas on Friday and Volantis on Sunday. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bases Loaded. Of course, we'll be back next Friday. So for Jeff Howe and CJ Vogel, I'm Blake Munroe, and we'll see you then.